Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. We have got so much to talk about. It's going to be fantastic. Yes, international rugby is almost back. It's almost back. It's almost back. So we're going to go through and do our All Blacks 23 that's going to start on Sunday against the Aussies or the Wallabies. Yes. And to help me do that, there's a bunch of other stuff we're going to talk about as well. You know, we've got some golden point stuff going on. So is that a good idea? Is it a bad idea? We will let you know. Also, what are we going to do? We are going to do, I've gone blank. Oh, yes, future Super Rugby, because you know what? Brett Impey has come out and said, well, this is what's going to happen in the future. So we'll tell you what he was actually saying behind all of that, because there are a bunch of things in there that were kind of on the quiet that people haven't been talking about. What we have been talking about, though, is lots of Pacifica people going, you're really, really arrogant, New Zealand Rugby. Why haven't you given us a team? So we'll talk about that one as well. So lots and lots of stuff to cram in. And you know what? I've been a naughty boy because I haven't changed my logo, my branding. Just get rid of the coffee cup. Let's bring in the bucket hat. Ta-da! There we go. And it helps if I'm wearing it the right way round. Oh, what a shocker. We're all over the place this evening. And if you want to know why I'm hyper, it's because I'm either hyper or asleep. And so hence, got to go, and go big, go hard, go early, and then crash and let Boa and Stephen carry me through the last 50 minutes of the show. How you doing, boys?
Great. Thank you, Paul.
Very well. Thank you. Very well. That's a lovely logo, I have to say. The DrivingMaul. It's got this thing about it. Good vibes, you know.
Absolutely. Oh, hey, this guy can come back again. We'll have him again. Absolutely. And yeah, we are looking for a beer sponsor, by the way. Always love a beer sponsor. And oh my word, I don't believe it. We've actually got somebody else joining us as well. I'm not sure what he's doing here because hey, he was too tired last night. He was too tired this morning. Jeez, you think here we are thinking we just can't get the staff anymore, and he still expects to come on the show. Jeez, Arshwin. God, dear, lucky bugger.
I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to be on or not. You seeing the link around? It's like, oh my God, am I supposed to be on?
Well, you are now. Well, you have to. We might kick you off if we don't like your ideas, but yeah, we'll have you to start off with. I mean, wearing an Aces cap. Come on, it's a rugby show. It's not the.
It's just interesting because I sort of thought, hey, I've worn the rugby cap on the cricket show, so I better reverse it around every now and then too.
Well, dearie me. Swinging from the hip, 8 p.m. on Thursday, so do join Arshwin for that one.
I was going to say, Paul, this gives us a definite international flavour. We've got a Sri Lankan down on the right-hand corner, an Indian on the top of the right-hand corner, an Englishman on the left-hand corner, and, of course, a New Zealand Māori right here. So we have got the perfect mix for the DrivingMaul this evening. Hopefully,
Kiwi, mate.
Hopefully we've all bought our A game.
Which Indians? Kiwi. I don't see any Indians. I see a Kiwi. That's because, you know what? I'm colourblind. Unlike Stephen there.
I'm always colourblind. Still got the glasses on.
He's got the glasses on. How many fingers am I holding up?
It's 10, buddy. So thank God for
that. Oh dear. Where do we start? Let's start off with Brett Impey. Because boy, oh boy, he's had some crackers this week. So we have the CEO of the Wallabies, of Rugby Australia, going on the what do we call it? I've gone blank now. Going on the breakdown show on Sky. One that must be a show I never watch, so I can't tell you what he actually said. But one of the things he was quoted as saying was that the relationship between Australia and New Zealand rugby is at an all-time low ebb. At which Brett Impey turned around and said, "Oh, that's just banter." What is Brett Impey smoking? Is he on cloud nine or is he right here, Stephen?
Oh, gee, listen, there's been a lot of water under the bridge, and I suppose all parties are handling it probably not in the best possible way. I suppose for us, for the public or the people who follow the game, we're all a little bit in the dark, so we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, and unfortunately all we can really do, and that's what makes our show so popular, all we can do is speculate. About what is actually going on at the minute. It just seems like if you want to bring people in the room, usually the best way to start is actually with a little bit of respect, regardless of what's going on in the back room, because you want everybody to come together as opposed to be having a crack at each other. So I think all parties all round have got a bit to learn, as opposed to hanging their dirty washing out.
Boa, Ashwin?
Oh, look, I think we've known about the arrogance of the NZRFU, and really it just carries on. That's all it is at the end of the day. We also sort of see how, when we look at the structures around, whether it's at the board level or lower, it sort of over time hasn't become reflective of rugby in the country. It's been reflective of rugby in a region, and it's starting. Chickens come home to roost, basically.
There does seem to be a very much an old boys club feel about the whole kind of way things are run, doesn't it? And if you're not part of the old boys club, well, hey, we'll have a few token people on the board.
Old boys from a region. Let's be honest. Old boys from a certain region.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yes, a certain club. Or if you didn't go to the right school, and if you didn't drink with the right person and scratch the right backs, you're not going to be part of it, are you? Let's be honest.
Nope.
Now, Boa, I know you might want to reserve comment on some of these, because I know you perhaps have trying to work a bit closer with some of the unions than we are. But so yeah, if you're happy for you to keep out of that one, I think
one thing I have to say is what I can say and what I can see is the commerce or the commercial, the lion's share of the commerce. That's what's causing most of this disruption, for a better choice of words. Mm-hmm. And given that we're in this whole post-COVID lolly scramble, everyone wants a lion's share, and they want to call the shots. And I think what we as fans and what we as commentators on the sideline we're picking up is a little bit of this crossfire, and of course different personalities right across the two boards tend to react in slightly different manners. Some people are very black and white. They put it out the way it's supposed to be said. Some people, just say, hey, it's a bit of banter. But I think what it really comes down to is that the NZR probably want more control of the finances and have a lion's share of the commerce. And that's what we're seeing with all this posturing back and forth. So let's just hope and see a little bit of sanity prevailing, and once this whole post-COVID-19 blows away,
But you're hitting nail on the head in terms of the commerce, and the fact is that commercially speaking, the NZRFU are naive. They really are working to old strategies around making money. They're not really looking at the alternatives, streams or methods on how they can make more money. That's basically it. They're still carrying on like they lived in 1970s, 1980s amateur era on how they're going to make money. I was in America at the beginning of the year, and I sort of absolutely gobsmacked at the way that the merchandise is sold over in America. It's like as cheap as chips. But the reality is the cheapest chips, they sell truckloads as opposed to a premium price, and they sell bugger all. Now, sure, it's about percentages, right? And the fact is that you can sell a lot of product at a lower percentage, but you'll make more money and more revenue and more profit, or you can sell it at a premium and sell less and say, oh, look, we sell our margins on our products are 50%. And if you understand margins, then you'll sort of realize it's doubling your price, and you think, wow, we make 50% margin. Yeah, but you sell one jersey and you make $100. You sell 1,000 jerseys at $10 and you're going to make more money. And it's just like, that's the commercial reality. And they carry on down this. I have my cousin who actually approached the NZRFU about licensing some product so that he could promote it and sell it. And, the fact is that they wanted an arm and a leg for him to be able to make some. He was going to do some products and pets.
For pets? Oh,
yeah.
All Black Superdog. Brilliant.
That's
Love
it. Exactly. Look, the way that just digressing onto the pet market, people don't have kids, they have pets, and they treat their pets like kids, and they spend money on them. Okay, they spend lots of money on them, and the fact is that there's a market. He's identified it. He was doing something about it, but it's hamstrung by the licensing agreements.
So, Stephen, I noticed you taking some notes there. Are you about to?
Oh yes, I'm writing. I'm writing this stuff down, mate. This is
Yeah, actually, look, I agree about the pets. There was a company, I think, a few years back. They made a fortune selling pet rocks to parents who are looking to,
Rocks.
Rocks. They just sell you a rock, and it's a pet rock. You spend $20 US. I think they sold something like almost 9 million units. All they did was just put a logo, brilliant marketing online campaign, and there you go. So I hear what you're saying. Licensing agreements can be quite prohibitive. So let's just hope that the next year, once we come out of this whole post-COVID, there will be some innovation and some lateral thinking on how they can actually monetize some of that intellectual property.
So, folks, before anyone takes it, pet Crocs, as in those really ugly shoes. Pet Crocs is where I'm going. I'll be marking that straight after. That's exactly what I thought Bella said. Pet Crocs. There's my niche. So
there's gold in them there hills.
Crocs, let me know.
It was just a rock. It was like the size of an egg, shape of an egg. They put it in a nice little box. And they sting you for $20, and they say, if you can look after this for 6 months, you will qualify. We'll give you a badge of honor, and you can graduate to get a real pet. So there you go, great idea. Yeah,
absolutely. Get them in training. A bit like remember what those things at school where kids were given a bag of flour. They were weighed at the beginning of the week and weighed at the end of the week, and the amount of flour that they lost out of the bag was how badly they treated their baby. Basically, they had to treat this baby really softly and kindly, and yeah. So there's all sorts of things along those sort of lines, which we
must have been an England thing, eh, Steve?
You could probably start with your DrivingMaul bucket hats. Hang on to it for a year, then you get 20% off for a red color hat.
Well, now talking of DrivingMaul bucket hats, because hey, let's do the sales pitch. I've gone down the premium route rather than the cheap route, and I expect to make a big margin. So I've sold only 2 of them. They're often telling me I've done this a bad way. But hey, if you would love to have one of these hats, then you can become a supporter of DrivingMaul at patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio. And there's a bucket hat club, $20 a month. After 5 months, I'll send you a hat. So there you go. Only $100, bargain for a bucket hat. And that includes postage. I don't charge you extra for the postage. So, and anywhere in the world, so there you go. As I say, 2 so far, but hey, it's a start, right, Ashwin?
It's a start. You got to start somewhere.
So we've had that one trial that I thought was great. So then we've also one of the things that Brett Impey came out and said was, look, next year we're basically having Super Rugby Aotearoa as it is because people liked it with some innovations. It's like, guys, mate, please. People liked it as it was. Stop messing around with it. They're going to add the one thing that a lot of people asked for, which is a final at the end of it, which sounds cool. But apart from that, please leave it alone. Don't do anything else. But he has come in for some stick from Aidan Clark, who is the Pacific Rugby Players CEO, and also Sir Brian Williams, saying that they're not going to have a Pacifica team in 2021. Now, what do you think, guys? Is this? Are they right in saying, look, if not now, when? Or is Brett Impey right in saying, look, whilst we've got these proposals, there just isn't enough time for them really to put together a proper team for what will probably be a kind of March-ish start to Super Rugby Aotearoa?
All at once. I just want to know, because effectively the thing with New Zealand Super Rugby teams is that they're sort of funded centrally, right? And the fact is that if you go and get like the Hawaii team. I've forgotten what it was going to be called, but you
Canada.
get that Hawaii team, and it's just like, well, who's funding that? Because if the NZRFU, which has got a hole in their bucket, dear Eliza, is funding it, then they really can't. So where's the money coming from? So I'm assuming, and it is a massive assumption, is that it's been based on the fact that the Hawaiian setup doesn't have the funding to actually make it viable.
Okay, so for people who aren't aware, that basically and please, Stephen, Archery and Boa, step in when I get this wrong, because
you got it wrong.
New Zealand Rugby, I'm going to get it wrong to some degree. New Zealand Rugby does not like to be transparent with how things are run financially on the whole. Okay, so a lot of this is pretty much educated guesswork as to how about this runs. But my understanding is that all the players, plus I think it's 2 coaches, are funded centrally by New Zealand Rugby and paid, and that all the TV money goes to New Zealand Rugby. The Super Rugby franchises don't see that. The Super Rugby franchises only make money from ticket sales and sponsorship, and then they have to cover the rest of the costs. Actually, probably excluding transport, I guess. I think transport's probably covered as well out of that, and which is why when they had the no crowds earlier this year, they were totally buggered. So what was the pen there for, Archer?
I was being a knight. I was holding my sword up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Good evening, Batman. Yes, our 4 knights. So then that's is that your understanding as to how the Super Rugby kind of money works?
That's my understanding. So
so basically, if they bring in, and we'll get into it in a second, 3 more teams, who's paying for those players? Is it central? Is it from the teams? If so, do those teams get any TV money? Back behind the scenes finances, there is a plethora of questions which we haven't got a clue as to how it's really really going to go, to be honest. But just purely from a could you play the team in 3 months? Is it a good idea?
Well, look, as far as I'm concerned, the most simplest missing link here is there's no clear communication. I think if someone from the NZR would come out and say, look, this is what it actually takes to run a team. These are some of the costs, and this is where we're currently at the moment, and this is what we actually need to bankroll a team. They're struggling as it is to look after their own existing franchises. So if they can't financially, and if it is not viable to bring in another franchise, it's simply financially not possible. But that needs to be communicated quite clearly. You can't have cryptic messages saying, look, now's not the time, etc., so forth. What tends to happen is when Pacifica Rugby gets talked about quite a bit, there's always there's quite an emotional stirring which comes into play, which is pretty much what we call the qualitative side of the equation. But as you rightly pointed out, Paul, because it's a bit of a hush hush as far as financials go from NZR. This is just starting to add more speculation as to why there is no Pacifica franchise. And of course, the other question I have to say is, and this is probably not going to be a very popular view, if the Pacifica franchise is so keen on getting on board, why can't the Pacifica unions bankroll them into the Aotearoa competition? Because World Rugby, on an annual basis, hand out so much cash and money, funds, resources, call it what you may, lots of dollars, euros, and pounds to these unions. So the question has to be asked, what's happening? What's up, guys?
Where's that money going?
Boy, I like you. I like your thinking, Boy, because every day, small business owners take really, really big risks. They basically, as Ashwin's shaking and nodding his head there, small business owners take really big risks. They put their livelihoods on the line. They mortgage it against it. They mortgage it against their house. And yeah, I agree. Why should the New Zealand Rugby Union be bankrolling a Pacific Island site? And you're right about the emotion. Everybody looks at the amount of Pacific Island players that are playing in New Zealand that go on to basically put together some really good careers, whether it's through the New Zealand rugby system. And boy, that they can think that structure until the cows come home. It doesn't pay you a hell of a lot to play rugby in New Zealand, whether you start from junior grades or whether you progress into senior grades and you get to an age where you decide, listen, I want to play for Tonga or Samoa. The choice is there. Obviously, a lot of them see the picture of wanting to play for the All Blacks, but once again, even as an individual player, there's a risk and reward side as well, just like a small business owner as well. And I agree with Boa. Why can't some of these Pacific Island nations, if they feel like, get your governance together, line up all your ducks and drakes. I'm also very concerned that these sides won't be competitive. We've seen what the Sunwolves have had to do by getting a lot of expats in to be competitive. We look at the Australian side of Super Rugby, and no disrespect to the Western Force, you could see they were just struggling in terms of personnel. They would stay in games for 45, 50 minutes, and pretty much the quality of the better players would always run over those teams.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
just going to say, sorry, just to Stephen's comment about how cheap rugby is. And rugby is a cheap sport to play in New Zealand because so my son we paid $70 for the rugby season this year. Obviously, COVID affected. Cricket is more than double that. Soccer is even more expensive again. So rugby's a cheap sport to get started in New Zealand, to get into.
Yep, no, absolutely it is. And that's all funded basically from the All Black brand, trickling down through that, because everything below All Blacks makes a loss, essentially. And also by a lot of volunteers stepping up and working for and putting lots of time in for their clubs.
Paul, can I just jump in? I just want to use the analogy of English football. There's a lot of expat Jamaican players, from the West Indies that are basically running around playing football in England, and there's going to be a stage in the future where the English football side will probably be predominantly a coloured side. Nobody's jumping up and down about taking players from the Caribbean or any other parts of the world, or whether you owe those countries anything. It's just, to me, it's all about opportunities for those players. So you actually have the ability to choose. And I get a bit ticked with the John Campbells of the world that go down the emotional path and saying, we've just basically pillaged the Pacific Islands. Really? This works. This works. True. That's not true. This works both ways.
Yeah, statistically, that is actually incorrect, because I'll take you guys back to something which Eddie Jones, they
wind up.
said on the wind up, where he came and said, the three greatest academies, Samoa, Tonga, and Fiji. Statistically, if you actually look at New Zealand's, as in players who were born in New Zealand, their contribution right across the teams, and more specifically to the Pacific Islands. So we're talking Samoans, Tongans, and Fijians who were actually born and bred and who played their rugby in New Zealand. That contribution to those teams is head and shoulders above everything else. There's this whole emotional qualitative analysis which is not quite accurate, because if you actually look at the quantifiable numbers, the reality is New Zealand is the world's largest rugby academy for high performance and test level representation by a country mile.
Okay, look, let's get a few things. Let's bust a few myths here. So yes, if you look at where players are born, there's a large number of second generation Kiwis who are of Tongan and Samoan in particular heritage or lineage, whatever word you want to use, who go over and play for those teams. Around about half or more of their Rugby World Cup squads tends to have been born in New Zealand, but still have cultural and family links back to the islands. And yes, there are some players who come out, but who come over here and then go on to play for the All Blacks. But the majority are New Zealand born, even when they've got Pacifica heritage. That does not mean that some schools here don't misbehave and use scholarships to try and improve their rugby teams over by offering like 6-month scholarships, etc. Which there are always bad apples in these things. So it's a couple of there are You can find examples if you to back up other either arguments if you want to. Sorry, go on, Stephen.
I was going to say maybe one, maybe two examples, but like I say, if you were doing the maths, out of all of those kids that may have been picked up for scholarships, how many of them actually go on to become All Blacks?
All Blacks.
I wasn't saying they would go on to become All Blacks, but I'm saying that there are some schools here who have bring kids over for 6 months. They go back just purely to strengthen their rugby side.
Sure.
There are some. I say there are some
we're talking about
as well.
Yeah, but what we're talking about here is at international level. So it's actually beneficial for the islands to actually get us for one of those kids to get a 6-month scholarship. Because the fact is that they've still got a rugby education, and now they can go back and represent Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji, and they've picked up a rugby education in New Zealand.
Now, the ones that come over here get a scholarship for 3-4 years, get proper schooling, proper rugby education, absolutely fine. The ones where schools go over and cherry pick kids for 6 months just purely for not even the secondary schools or the intermediate school kind of championships, it's a bit dodgy there as to kind of, is that really what schooling should be about for kids? But yes, on the whole, when they come over for multiple year sponsorships, it is good for the kid. It's good for the whether they go on to play for the All Blacks or for their home country where they were born. It's good all round. So on the whole, they get a better education, and it generally works out. But I think there are ways also of supporting the Pacific Islands without it being purely sort of cash driven. So like the Maori All Blacks going over and playing tests in the islands, for example, that could happen. Sure, there's a cost to it, but it's not a cost of sort of just giving cash to players. Yes, there's a cost of sending a team over there. There are ways of doing that as well, but that is a different argument, a different discussion. Sorry, rather than argument to what we're going to talk to what Brett Impey has suggested. So, my personal opinion is that the time frame for a Pacifica team for 2021 is too short. Stephen pulls up a good example there with the Force. They had 2 weeks, I think 2 to 4 weeks of certainty before Super Rugby AU to pull a team together. Now they had some contracted players, but that was for Global Rugby level. That wasn't for Super Rugby level, and they scratched around. The Sunwolves, we didn't know their full team until about 2 months, maybe a month before they started. If you give people a short runway, they're not going to be competitive. If you give them a long runway, in the same way that the Jaguares were given, and the Jaguares not given, they organise themselves. You can come in and be semi-competitive and then become competitive. I mean, they beat the Cheetahs in their very first game, for example. Now, were they competitive the first couple of years? Not really, but they had to learn about travel, learn about playing at Super Rugby level. If you put a team together to start the beginning of March now, who are you going to have? Most players have got contracts. There are very few players available.
So going on the who we're going to have, it's just like, so there's rumours around that 3 have been selected to go forward for the next Super Rugby version. I mean, apart from the obvious, not quite true, but along those lines, right? In terms of that's what they're looking at. Twiggy's one of them. Who else is there? Who else is left?
Okay, Twiggy isn't one of them. But anyway,
he isn't one of them. Well, okay. So it makes it back to 3.
So there are 4 teams. There's 4 plus 1 that they've mentioned. Four that have put proposals forward to have an extra Super Rugby team within the Super Rugby Aotearoa. Brett Impey has said that by the end of November, 3 of those will be green lighted and to start in 2022. So if not now, when? If New Zealand, if Brett Impey does stick to that 2022, that's a much better guide. If you give, say, November for a March start, giving them 14, 15 months, that's a much better runway than for this year. Now, those 4 teams, Kanaloha out of Hawaii. We have China Lions, which is a combined Bay of Plenty and China Rugby together. We have this new Pacifica team, which is a Brian Williams, Counties Manukau, and the New Zealand Players Association conglomerate. Hence, the New Zealand Players Association have, funnily enough, come out saying, "Hey, New Zealand Rugby, you should pick a Pacifica team, and it should be the one that we're part of organising, not the other ones that have put a bid in." Funny that. And the fourth one is a team called the Asia Dragons, which is based out of Singapore. They have been part of Global Rapid Rugby in the past. They weren't this time, and they are putting a tens team together for the new Global Tens competition, which kicks off in Bermuda soon. Now, they always said they didn't want to join in 2021 as the timeline was too short. They wanted to play in 2022. So those are the four, and then you've also got Twiggy, who's been talking with New Zealand Rugby. But I think the proposals are from those four, and that the Twiggy one was a chat and more about him staying in Super Rugby AU. So those are your four options, boys: Kanaloha, China Lions, the Pacifica Counties Pacifica, for a better name, and the Asian Dragons.
Hey guys, I've just got this is just purely my take on it. I think China Dragons, South China Dragons, are probably the front runners at this stage, purely because economically it makes perfect sense. It will allow NZR to penetrate a monumental, huge market. A few years back, I think when China wanted to make inroads into the seventh circuit at the Olympics, they actually approached Fiji and said, "We want to hire 300 sevens coaches." That's right, 300. And then the Fijian Rugby turned back and said, "We actually only have 2 qualified level 3 coaches." So you're luck, sir. But again, guys, the point I'm trying to make is the way things are structured and the way there's a innovation or the lack of it in generating revenue, because rugby seems to be a bit of a sport which is kind of slow to adapt to these things, and as Ashwin rightly pointed out, so imagine if you were to sell, I don't know, 10 million All Blacks jerseys in China overnight, how much revenue that would come bring into the coffers. And same thing with South China Lions. I remember watching a football match I think it was about 20 years ago, when the Australians were touring. They were playing the Chinese Defense Forces. 700 million, that's right, 700 million people watched that game live. It wasn't even a first-class game. So I think, economics, numbers, and money will talk. And also, just coming back to the Pacific Islands, look, guys, the reality is Pacific Islands play, especially playing in the Premiership and in Europe and in Japan, they're seen as a very viable subcontracted labor option. It's good, cheap, solid labor. That's what it is. That's probably not a politically correct way of saying it, but that's essentially what it is, and that's where these kids go and make their living. And the inward remittance coming back into the islands far outweighs, a lot of these emotional, qualitative things which are being discussed. And that's why you constantly see the islands, the Pacific Island teams struggle to put a decent test lineup together, because the clubs just don't release them. Now, this is not unique to rugby alone. You see this happening in many other professional sports. But this is something they're going to have to deal with. So my counter argument to this is, there's nothing stopping the Pacific Islands starting their own competition. It's just a case of...
Well, you're heading down a totally different line of discussion here, because basically I'm asking you, Brett Impey said he's going to take 3. He's going to greenlight 3 of those teams in November, at the end of November. So as I say, Kanaloha, China Lions, not South China Lions, which is a Hong Kong team. That's a different team entirely. So don't get mixed up between that, folks. The Counties Pacifica and Asia Dragons. You got 3 out of 4. Which 3 do you want, guys?
I abstain.
You abstain. You don't want any.
The thing is that, no, it's not there. The fact is that it's like what we talk about. Everything's done behind closed doors. We don't even know what the qualities of these teams are. We don't know what their proposals are, anything like that. What are we basing it on? We don't know anything about them. We can't. I mean, like just on the surface of it, as Bo has alluded to, and is obviously the team from China makes sense. The team from Hawaii had a strong backing with the names that you had behind them, and well, see, you're shaking your head. Where you say, well, I mean, like what I'm saying is that you had All Blacks that were part of the group supposedly, or weren't they, or were they? You had money out of America that was supposedly in it, wasn't it? Again, if you don't have the information that's clarified, then what do we know? What are we basing our decision on?
Okay, true. And I'll pin my colours to the mast here, which is basically the other three teams that are not Kanaloha. The other three teams have at least put together a rugby side in the past, which is a big plus. Kanaloha so far have had a brand which they got done out by, or which someone out of the Cook Islands has taken them up for copyright breach on. They said that they had links with the Hawaiian government, the university, the airline, and the tourism board. The university said, no, you can't use our training grounds. And the Hawaiian government said that those other three hadn't even heard of them. So, they've not even put a team together yet. Whereas at least the other three have put teams together and have entered competitions, successfully taken part in those competitions to completion, which has got to be, except for the Pacifica counties, which again is a brand new thing. But counties Manukau, at least you are linked to a organisation that has put teams together.
What's the key ingredient? What's the key ingredient that they need to make them successful?
A long-term proper plan and time to get it put together properly.
Money. Who's going to have the money? Who's going to have the dollars? Who's going to have the dollars? That's the key.
There lies the answer. There lies the answer. And
there lies the answer.
The Chinese outfit will put out a very, very strong squad of 30 plus players, an assortment selected from the Pacific Islands and some very strong players from Europe. That's inside information I have, and they will augur a really strong case. And you know what's that saying in those American Rocky movies? You put some hustle behind the muscle. That's what these guys will come up with, and there you go. What can I say?
Jordan saying that the Counties Pacifica has the biggest population, more money. We know that's. I mean, like they got the population, they ain't got the money, because we know that because Counties hasn't got the money. Now it's just like what's going to change when you've got an organisation that struggled to find the money is saying we've got this set up and we've got all the support and we're going to get the money, but you haven't been able to get the money anyway, and so now you can magically get the money.
Crowdfunding. Yeah. What can I say?
Crowdfunding. Yeah. Give a little. Need to give a little page.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I was just going to say on the Hagawares, they got a good landing strip, no question, and it took them a couple of years. But one thing that they've always had in Argentina is quality players. They've had, and we knew once they came together, that quality, if they were able to pull some of that quality back that was playing for clubs in Europe, and we know that the Argentinians are very, very good ball handlers. They can play a couple of different styles. They've moved on from the big scrum, line-out drive, kicking goals, drop goals type days, and they do play an expansive game, which is competitive, and that was seen in the final against the Crusaders a couple of seasons back, where bounce of the ball, it could have gone their way. My real issue is here: what sort of quality teams are we going to get? And three, maybe one, but three, really?
Three's a stretch. That's the other thing. When I read that, it was like three. What, you're struggling to get one, and now we've jumped to three.
Okay. Do you want to know the reason why he's jumped to three? The reason he's jumped to three is that basically New Zealand have decided that, and I was going to do a supporters only video for this, which I'll go into in more depth. But essentially, New Zealand has said a Trans-Tasman competition isn't going to happen. So, when we did the and that's not just next year, that's longer term. Basically, we can't basically it's got to that kind of level. When they did the Super Rugby review, they came out of that saying that they needed an 8 to 10 team competition to make it competitive. Oh, sorry, to make it financially viable. So not competitive, financially viable. We have 5 Super Rugby teams. How many do we need to make it up to 8? 3. So funnily enough, he's come out and said 3 teams. So that's where the 3 teams has come from. And I say that's not something that anyone has talked about, or the implications of what that 3 means, which basically means no long-term, in the long term, or the medium term at least, no Trans-Tasman competition. That'll be a post-Super Rugby Aotearoa kind of Champions Cup style thing.
Hey guys, do you think that the reason why New Zealand rugby will never go in with Australian rugby is because New Zealand's rugby fear of making Australian rugby stronger?
I don't know if it's that, or we had a leaked board, a board quote from early this year. Now, whether it's true or not, it's leaked. Who knows? But one of the comments was, we don't know if Rugby Australia will exist next year. We can't plan as though they will be because of the infighting and financial viability.
I think, yeah, my gut feel is still the fact is that at the end of the day, you know, at the hierarchy of the New Zealand Rugby Football Union, they're excrement scared that the fact is that if Australian rugby gets strong all of a sudden, it's just like, you know, that and they've facilitated that to happen. That's a big problem for them, because we've talked numerous times is that the model that they require to have a superbly successful tournament is right in front of their eyes, and that's the other oval ball code in Australia. It runs a 14-team competition, I think it is 14, and it's like it brings in truckloads of money. There's mismanagement with that money. That's their problem, but the model is there, and we can get to those team numbers and run a competition like that. And the fact is that there's more interest globally in rugby, and so that to try and find the money, the opportunity's there. So we know it's possible. I think I genuinely believe that it's the fact that they just absolutely petrified that Australia would get super successful because we'd help them build strength. You go back to the early days of Super Rugby, they had the World Cup in Aussie, and they had, off the back of it, they built good numbers. They were getting traction. They had success with, going with John Eales, etc. And when the Gregans came along and all that, and they had a great team. And the want of a successful team is there in Australia. They just don't have it at the moment. So why would people going to follow them? If they become successful, they come back to the game.
Absolutely, and bang on the money there, and that will correlate to financial success on field. It's like that, the part in the movie Ford versus Ferrari, where there's one scene where Ford, they're trying to figure out, why is it that this small-time car maker in Italy, once upon a time, of course, was outdoing their sales, and they figured out that they give their fans the taste of victory. And that just it just transpires to pretty much everything, i.e. merchandise, more kids participating in the code at lower levels, more volunteers coming on board, more clubs popping up, more media time, more social media interaction. So yeah, absolutely, I think the stronger the game is, it reflects right throughout, and more so financially.
Guys, I actually think there was a really missed opportunity by both sides of the Tasman to still have a Trans-Tasman competition, but incorporate Pacific Island players into the actual super squads, where you can carry half a dozen. Each squad can carry half a dozen Pacific Island players, and that way it brings their standard up. You have that creative interest from the Pacific Islands. Can you imagine the interest if there's Tongan or Samoan boys running around for specific franchises? And I personally think that would have been the way easier. It would have been the easier way to do it, and it would have strengthened that side. You imagine somebody like the Western Force having 3 or 4 quality Pacific Island internationals running around for them. That would only lift the quality of that particular side. I think both parties have missed a huge opportunity.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm really not so sure about having extra Pacific Island sides, because I personally don't think they'll be competitive. Quite frankly, because the best of your Mitre 10 Cup sides would put them away quite comfortably, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. You look at, okay, so let's go back, take a step back. Fiji, basically most of the people in Fiji now in terms of Super Rugby level seem to support the Crusaders, right? There's a big groundswell there around that. And you look at it, when did that start happening? There's a chap called Marika Vunibaka that started playing for the Crusaders. And that's when they started following. That's when obviously the success and they jumped on the bandwagon type scenario as well. But Marika Vunibaka was the start of the big numbers of Fijians following the Crusaders.
Yeah.
If you've got that in Super Rugby across the teams, and now there's that sort of you're gonna my favorite player from you're from Samoa, and you got your favorite player that's come from Samoa playing for the Chiefs or the Blues or Canes, Highlanders or Crusaders, and now you're buying their jersey. It makes so much sense.
How good would it be? You see all these Fijian wingers running around in French club rugby. How good would it be to see these guys running around on the end of a chain in a Super Rugby team on hard grounds, playing an expensive style of rugby that actually suits them? To me, it makes no sense. It's an easy fix. That's how you get the Pacific Islands involved. In the same way as the NRL. One of the reasons that Ma'a, the Tongan National Rugby League team, has got good, because all of those Tongan boys running around in the NRL, instead of playing for the Kiwis, have all decided
or the Kangaroos.
Or the Kangaroos, they've decided to play for their country of origin. And I can guarantee you that the same thing will happen with these boys. Listen, Australian Rugby Union, New Zealand unions, you can't touch these guys. They're part of these extended squads. That's how you get Pacific people involved in the game. It's easy.
It's a simple thing, right? They come in as international players. They're not New Zealand-based players. They're international players.
Okay, folks. I think we have we've only got 14 minutes left. Do you think that's enough time to pick an All Black 23 for the Bledisloe Cup?
You better check some names up there, because I think they're picking from about 50, aren't they?
Yeah, we've lost track of this because we've been so engrossed in Mitre 10,
there is. Boa and I were talking beforehand, and basically, he and I have the same opinion that basically that this Bledisloe Cup game has come out of nowhere, because we spent all our time concentrating on the Mitre 10 that we forgot this was even going to happen. So, yes, I will try and. Throw some names at you according to the squad that I believe is available. So, starting at hooker, we've got Amua, Coles, Taylor. Is it simple to say Taylor starting, Coles on the bench?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, I'd like to see Amua get some game time at some stage, though.
Yep.
You got to start bringing him in, don't you? Because I think Coles, how many days he's got left is the debatable one, don't you think? I mean, I like his skills. Obviously, we love Dane Cole's skill sets, but how many more days has he got left?
Yep, true, agreed. I think he's got a few more years left, but you've got to start thinking about 2023, and will he make it that far with the injuries in the past?
He gets injured. He gets injured these days. That's the thing. Yeah.
Moody to
okay.
Yeah. Chuck that in.
And on the bench.
Wrong side.
Titan. Offer.
Just put it.
Yeah, you're right.
Don't put easy.
It's easy.
Don't put easy, because then it'll be the wrong Tuanga Fasi.
On the bench,
you got Moody in one. Or Joe.
Yeah. To be fair, you should put Joe.
I think these two Bledisloe Cup games, we pick our best sides. Absolutely.
Yeah, we have to win it.
Slaughter the Wallabies. Decimate them. Do a real Israel Adesanya on these guys, and then just kind of blood all the youngsters.
But Lomax is quite ahead, isn't he? So I think we'll see Lomax at 18.
And
Carl. Probably Carl too.
Carl, yeah.
Has to be a chance.
You got Carl
holding together.
Tualala in there.
Oh, Nepolalala, of course. How many?
I think they'll go with Carl. I'll be honest with you. I think they'll go with Carl. Am I on the right side of the scrum? Or have I got the right side of the scrum wrong?
That's correct. He's on the opposite sides of offer because they both play in the same team. That's how I know.
No. I'm talking about Nepo. I'm talking about Nepo and Carl.
Oh, okay. I'm
Nepo,
not sure.
La and Carl. Yeah, whether they're on the same side or not, I can't remember.
Tuipulotu, Whitelock.
Yep.
Yeah, clear top pick.
Just put Paddy.
Bugger off.
Oh, here we go. Back row. Here we go.
So we've basically got Quinton Strange injured, so they've got Dunshay has been called up. But you've got to say that if they're going with who they selected to start off with, on the bench.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a form player coming out of this entire comp. Yeah, no question.
Which is an amazing meteoric rise from him, and obviously,
to be honest, that's like what we like to see, isn't it? The old bolter. That's the sort of almost the old bolter. It's great to see. To think that somebody can come out of nowhere, and not that he's come from nowhere, absolutely, but you know what I mean.
He's probably
he was only on the Chiefs team because of injuries to locks. I mean, this is a bit like Carl, 3 years ago now, where he only got into the Chiefs team because of injuries, and then ended up being an All Black. But Eyes had the same thing. He only got into the Chiefs team because of injuries, and suddenly he's there.
But he was on the radar through the under-20s.
Okay, yep, true. Our Lucy's then 6 jersey.
Well, obviously Kane 7. Pop up.
Okay, we're going to put Kane at 7.
Yeah.
Plus Kane.
Xavier
8. And do they start like someone like Papali'i at 6 then?
No, they'll go for they need a line out option. They'll go for Frizzell.
Yeah, they'll probably start with Frizzell, and I don't know. I'm looking at a debutant at number 8, Hoskins.
No, not with you're not going to play Artie?
You got to play Artie somewhere. So
you're saying Artie at 6? Artie at 6 and then Hoskins at 8?
Hoskins at 8 and Artie to come off the bench.
Oh, no. Artie's starting. Artie's got to start. The marketing men, I think, will tell them that Artie's got to start.
Yeah, Grace is an interesting selection. That if you're talking a bolter to make the 15, he could be the bolter. Great line out option, because let's not forget. Let's not forget that I mean to say I don't know if it's in terms of stats. How does Tuipulotu stack up as an actual line-out forward
option?
Yeah, he was the third best line-out success rate in Super Rugby Aotearoa. So again, he doesn't get the highest percentage of throws thrown to him. So I think it's just overall his game, especially his. So
what you're saying is that they don't use him as a target often, but when they do, it's accurate.
He's on the money. 27 from 27. So yeah.
I reckon Grace will actually start in the 6 jersey, and then Satutu coming off the bench for impact with his running.
Rid of Frizzle?
I've got rid of Frizzle. Yes, I have. The next one's easy. Smith and TJ.
Yeah, clear top pick. Aaron Smith.
Now,
should
we skip number 10 and come back to number 10? Because this is going to be a nightmare.
Why is it going to be a nightmare? They're going to go with Moanga at 10 and Barrett at 15.
You think so?
Yeah. Absolutely.
They're not going to go Barrett and Dame McKenzie.
No, McKenzie will be on the bench.
Yep.
So you
23 McKenzie.
23.
I cannot see them going Moanga. I just don't think they trust him. I think we'll see.
I think you're basing it on the semi-final, but the fact is that the semi-final they stuffed up the loose forward trio. That's where they.
Oh no! I'm basing on the way that they didn't trust him. That it took injuries for him to get even into the All Blacks squad.
Sure.
Yeah.
When he was playing well.
Yep. Oh no, I think they'll go with that.
My 2 wings are. This will surprise you, Geordie Barrett. on the 11 jersey and Caleb Clark in the 14 jersey.
Well, he said Geordie.
I heard what he said, and he's wrong. Bridge will be starting in that 11 jersey. There's no way Geordie Barrett will be in the 11 jersey.
He's on
If
fire.
Caleb Clark plays, Caleb Clark will be in the 11 jersey as well. Caleb Clark will not play 14.
Okay, we've got a chocolate fish on that.
Well, guys, look, I'm with Steve. I'm tipping Jody Barrett to get a start or play within that 23 solely because I am anticipating a lot of penalties. The Wallabies will be giving a lot of penalties, especially when they're in between the halfway and the 40. And I think Jody will look at some wrong. Yep, big boots. And it's just with Dave Rennie, and especially just watch out for the Wallabies tackle technique. Dave has coached a very interesting tackle technique called the dead arm tackle. A really good example is Sio Tompkinson, and we all know how that ended. So watch out. And the player to actually be careful, for a better choice of words, is the Tongan Thor. Tupu. He's very prone to roll in with his hip and shoulder, so I think they'll be keeping a close eye. So don't be surprised if you see a few yellow cards and a few penalties for some high shots.
That's a good side, lads. Very good side.
Done. So what were you saying about how many minutes we hit?
Anyway, just to finish it off for those people who are listening on the podcast rather than watching on the video.
Just read it out.
To my mind, Jordie Barrett will not be an 11 jersey. If he's on the wing, he'll be on a 14 jersey. And Bridge or Caleb Clark will be both in the 11 jersey. Clark and Bridge have both played on the 11 jersey all the way through Super Rugby. So I think you'll have your attacking one on 11, and you'll have your solid guy into the high ball on 14. If you think about where Ben Smith, Dag, they've always played on that right wing on that 14. You've had your Julian Surveyors, etc. in that left wing position. Rico Iwanis, your more attacking one in that left wing. It's going to be that way round. You're not going to put Geordie in 11.
That means that they'll be going with Clark in 11.
So it's Bridge or Clark at 11. I think Clark. Bridge. You think Clark?
I'm with Clark. Start him all day, every day, easy. Impact player. Just go hard and give the man the ball, give him the space, and watch how he opens him up like a can of tuna. And I think if all the chips fall in place and they get their strike plays going very early, it's going to look like carnage in Wellington, and Eden Park is going to be worse.
I think you're right. In fact, there's that Clark, even with the Blues, and then the couple of games he played with Auckland, is that they were giving the ball too early to Clark, and then they're expecting miracles. Whereas if they actually had manipulated it a bit and given the ball to him with space and a couple of defenders, his impact would have been even more effective than what he was. And I think the All Blacks, being at that next level up, will be doing that. They're not just going to shovel the ball to Clark and say, here you go do something. They're going to manipulate the scenario and give him space and a couple of defenders in front of him to have a go.
He brings a power game to the All Blacks that we actually haven't seen since Julian Savea at his best.
Yep.
In my opinion, lads. So this is the opportunity to put this kid in.
I think the ABs will attack a lot from depth, and you'll see a lot of dummy runs in the midfield, giving this guy a lot of space and depth to attack from. And he reminds me of a Rupeni, cross with a Joel Mudiri.
I think Caleb Clark is a fantastic player, but you've got to remember when they did that survey of all of the Super Rugby players, they voted George Bridge as the best winger in the country. Now, admittedly, that was at the beginning of the season. We hadn't seen much of Caleb Clark, but I think George Bridge is probably going to be a bit of a player, a bit like Ben Smith, where Ben Smith was the first person in the team sheet. The question is where we're going to put him, because he's such a good footballer. And that was when you had your Carters and your Richie McCaws around. Hansen came out and said Ben Smith was my first name there, before Carter, Richie, before Nonu, before Conrad Smith. I think George Bridge, in his footballing brain, will be that kind of player where they'll go, okay, he's going to play. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Clark on 11 and Bridge at 14 rather than Geordie on the wing. I'm not convinced with Geordie on the wing. I love him at 15. I don't. So I'm not a seller for 14. Geordie's the one I'm unsure about there. The centre combination has got to be Goodhue and Anton Brown. They're the incumbents. They made the main. There's arguments for Rieko Ioane in there, who's been really good in that 13 jersey. But I think we'll see Rieko on the bench in that 22 jersey, and then Dane McKenzie at 23. So just reading this out then. Moody, Taylor, Offa as front row. Tuipulotu, Whitelock in the engine room with Grace, Kane and Sevilla as the Lucies. There's some question marks there around would Grace or Frizzell in that 6 jersey. 9, Smith and Mwanga at 10. Then I think the wingers are going to be a combination. We've gone Bridge or Clark at 11. Geordie at 14. Will be Geordie or Bridge at 14. The centre combination of Goodhue and Anton Brown with Bowden Barrett at 15. On the bench, Coles, Carl, Lomax, Va'i, Sotutu, TJ, Rieko, and DMAC. So there you go, folks. That's our prediction for how the 23 will be picked for this weekend ahead of this weekend Blazer Cup. And yes, we are talking about leaving out someone like Frizzell, who played brilliantly. We are talking about leaving out Severies, top try scorer in last year, and scoring tries for fun for the All Blacks. We are talking. Amua again. Should he be getting some time there? So there is still quality players being left out. I mean, Akira Ioane, again, another guy had a decent season, didn't even get in the conversation. Dodds Papali'i, we mentioned him once and then went nap, or I did anyway, after his name was thrown out there. Look, there are other quality players that could come in. I think they'll all get a go at some time, especially in the Rugby Championship, where you're playing 6 proper test matches back to back over 6 weekends, potentially 5. At which point, I think you are going to see the full squad getting used. Boys, thank you very much. It has been a cracking show this evening, and you know what? I managed to survive all the way through it. I didn't need to be carried during the second half. My fitness regime has held up, and I kept the pace going throughout the full 60 odd minutes anyway this evening. Thank you very much, Arsene, for joining us. And are we going to see you tomorrow morning for the morning sports briefing?
Should do. If I can, it's been a hard couple of days, so hopefully I'll be all right for tomorrow morning.
There you go, folks. Get some cricketing updates in there. Stephen, thank you very much for joining us yet again. Up for the morning sports briefing to bring us our weather report and birthdays. Yeah, absolutely. He's on mute, but his lips are moving, folks, on the podcast.
He said yes.
No, he's not on mute.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much for joining us yet again for the Driving Maul show.
Always a pleasure.
So, folks, don't forget you can listen to us on the podcast, actually, forget all that stuff. Just tell your friends about the show. In all honesty, hit share on Facebook would be really kind of nice, and tell your friends because help grow the audience. We really enjoy doing these. It's been a cracker. Loving my work. I think I'm brilliant. Love you all. Have a good night.